you found this podcast, chances are you're a high achiever and you're successful. But now you're stuck and stressed, and you realize that everything you've created hasn't given you the fulfillment and the joy you thought it would. This is where we discuss the keys of high performance mindset and stepping into the next best version of yourself. Welcome to the Positive Persistence Podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Positive Persistence Podcast, where we bring you stories to inspire you and strategies to help you tap into your potential and become your best self. Today, we are joined by an amazing woman who has dealt with tragedy and life change. Being thrust into a daunting situation with enormous responsibilities she didn't even ask for. She's become a resilient leader and successful entrepreneur, living her mission, leaving the world healthier and happier than she found it. Sarah Dumont, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ian. That was quite an introduction.
You deserve that introduction because you are an amazing individual, and I can't wait to share your story with our listeners and our viewers, because you are the epitome of resilience and positive persistence. And just, in the time that I've known you, you are such a positive person, and you haven't let what has happened in your life change your outlook and how you also interact with others, because I feel like you are a beacon of light and a beacon of hope, and what I like to call a soldier in the army of the light with the people that you touch. So thank you for taking time out to be on the show with us today.
Thanks for having me. And I could echo that and say all those things about you with your story. So thank you. That means a lot.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, Sarah, let's dive in here and give our listeners and our viewers a little background on your life journey, your life experience. And if you could, to kind of take us back to where you were before you started your entrepreneurial journey.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I am a proud graduate of Johnson & Wales University in Providence, Rhode Island, where I studied sports entertainment and event management and food and beverage service management. I always had dreams of being an event planner. I loved working in the food and beverage space. I always just loved how both events and food and beverage always brought people together, something I'm very passionate about. That's certainly trickled into what I do now. And I graduated from there and received a position with a company called Flick Hospitality, doing food and beverage service management in kind of a corporate space. They had a fantastic manager and training program that I rolled into. And so that was kind of my first experience with leadership. More management than leadership, I'll say, because we know that there's a difference. And I worked for Flick for, 2016 to 2021, almost 5 years. It was an amazing experience. Really my first go at a career. I moved from Providence, where I went to school, to Boston. So a very fast-paced city for a little Vermont girl like me. And, formed some really special relationships with the people that I worked with, and had kind of my first experience at, like I said, leading and managing people. And worked long hours, worked my tail off. In the event space, it's early mornings to late nights. Because it was corporate, I did have some weekend time off, which was great. And in 2019, 2020, my parents were living in Vermont at the time. My mom was diagnosed with her second go at cancer. She had kidney cancer and had surgery, had her kidney removed. And she was, our whole family have always grown up with a very holistic approach. So she kind of took the most holistic path she could with that journey, both times that she had cancer, the first time being when she turned 50, the second time being when she turned 60. And she had her kidney removed, had the surgery, but things progressed in a not so good way. By the time she had her kidney taken out, it was a little too late, I'll say. Some of the cancer had metastasized a bit. They did find some in her lymph nodes when they took her kidney out. And one thing led to another, and it was kind of a very sensitive time for our family. At the time, she was a successful owner of 2 Fit Body Bootcamp locations, her flagship location in Westminster, Vermont, and then a brand new location, which she actually opened, talk about positive persistence, amidst her diagnosis. She got her diagnosis and decided, I'm going to forge ahead anyways and open this location. She always had a dream to open 3. And so she pushed forward on that, which really didn't leave a lot of time for her healing. She was definitely others before self. She was, just a go-giver, servant leader, servant heart. She was very big on building community, connecting with clients. She started with Fit Body in 2009. So one of the first people when Fit Body was just a little business in a box, nothing like what it is now. So at that time, I was at kind of a pivotal changing point in my life. I was in a relationship with somebody who was living in Portland, Maine, and we were getting ready to join forces. And I had actually made the decision to move to Portland, Maine to kind of unite with him. And I had started, it was a big deal for me to leave this career that I had started and walk away from a pretty nice salary, a salary that was helping me pay off some pretty substantial student loans. And I had started interviewing for positions and got a job in a similar, same field, similar position. And, as things were progressing with my mom, I just kind of had this pull that it was time to go home. It was time to be near her. I saw how things were progressing. They weren't terrible at that point, but I saw that, as I mentioned, if she didn't have the support she needed, she wasn't going to take the time she needed to focus on her healing.
Where were you living at this point?
Boston.
You were in Boston. Okay.
So I was still in Boston, getting ready to relocate to Portland, Maine, and took a left turn and called my mom up one day. I had made the decision. I talked to my partner and he had said, if you want to move home, if you think it's, that it's a good time to do that, I'll go with you, which, that was a big driver for me because we had already made a commitment that we really didn't want to do the long distance thing anymore. We wanted to join forces. And so that was really all I needed to hear was that support. And, when I called my mom and told her, she was not for the idea. She was like, nope, you're not coming home. I don't need you to do that. You don't need to, change your whole life path for me. And I said, no, I'm coming home. It's important to me that I'm with my family during this. I have a brother who lives, out in Colorado. So it was really just my father there helping her and supporting her. Again, things weren't terrible with her health yet, but she had just kind of lost a key player in one of her locations. And so it was just really starting to pile on for her. So I'll never forget the day sitting at my kitchen table, calling her and having that conversation. And, ultimately I won that battle and told her, I've already made up my mind. And when I made that decision, I had no intentions of going home to work with her. I really was just kind of, feeling I need to relocate to be closer to her, to spend time with her, to support my family with whatever they may need at this time. Working for her, we had very similar personalities. So, I always felt that maybe that wouldn't be the best fit for us working side by side. But so I started looking for jobs around, Southern Vermont, New Hampshire area. Not much going on here, certainly not by way of corporate food and beverage or anything like what I was doing. And so, because of where our industry was at that point, because of COVID, this was smack in the middle of COVID, things had gotten really kind of quiet in the event space, obviously, what I was doing in Vermont. So I was lucky enough to have kind of a nice transition where, I wasn't working quite as many hours in my corporate job. So I started coming home on the weekends and just kind of getting a feel for that situation and helping my mom here and there with a few things with the business.
Yeah.
And one thing led to another. I was not able to find a reliable employment opportunity. And so she took me onto her team. And I don't even know really what my position was. I guess kind of like a director of operations role, which doesn't exist anymore typically in our Fit Body universe, but really just kind of the catch-all be-all with whatever she needed in supporting these two locations. A lot of administrative tasks, just kind of filling in whatever way that she needed. So I made that move home in July, August of 2020. And that year, almost year, she passed on September 3rd. She lost her battle to cancer on September 3rd of 2021. That time between August and September was just a complete whirlwind because things really took a turn south with her health. And it's such a blur thinking back on that time, like I was working in her business, but when I think about myself in the business then versus who I am as the owner of the business now, it's just night and day. I mean, I can't even tell you what I was working on, what I was doing. It was just my primary focus was being there for her. I mean, I remember, being at the gym, working alongside the team and having moments where I would be on the phone with her and she would just be in so much pain that I would just drop everything and go to her. So at that time, she decided to do an alternative treatment out in Arizona, We're in Vermont. And so she was traveling back and forth to Phoenix, Arizona every 11 days for an alternative chemotherapy. So it was not covered by insurance. And, we raised quite a bit of money for, through a GoFundMe to support X amount of months of that treatment. She saw really great results. They kind of told us from the jump, you will die from cancer. It's just a matter of how much can we push this off, and how high can we keep the quality of your life, which was always the most important thing for her. And so that time, I spent a lot of time at my parents' house watching their dogs, trying to keep the business afloat with the little amount of information that I knew about how things worked. And she ultimately ran out of funds and stopped doing treatment in April of 2021 and kind of just accepted the fate of, she went really inward, very spiritual family. We're all very spiritual. So she really went inward. And the hardest part was seeing this light who was a little bit squirrely, so energetic. She coached a lot. She loved to coach. That's what her passion was. That's why she, started with Fit Body. And watching that physical freedom be taken away from her was just horrific, and the pain she was in was just immense. And it was kind of, me and my dad were in this position of, we weren't really thinking about what's going to happen with the businesses when she passed. We were just so present with what was going on in that moment, trying to keep her comfortable. I mean, this woman was coaching clients on the phone in her bed till August, and she passed in September. Like, she was so committed to continuing to serve others. But she was really bedridden for those last few months. And it was, the pain that she was in was unlike anything I'd ever seen. And I would never wish that upon anyone, to see a loved one go through that. And, I have a lot of memories of, ultimately she ended up going into kind of a palliative care situation, then eventually to hospice. And then she was actually sedated for the last 13 days of her life because the pain was so extreme that they could not get ahead of it. And unfortunately in New Hampshire, which is where the hospital was that she was, that's kind of their way of letting someone make that transition. But I remember spending days, beside her hospital bed working, right? And trying to process payroll and trying to do all these things and ask her for passwords and just kind of, take these little nuggets of information that I needed just to stay afloat on the day to day to keep things running. But, in those moments, you also need to be present and with the person who is on their way out of this earthside journey. So ultimately she passed on September 3rd of 2021. And while that was really hard to wrap my head around as a 27-year-old, I still feel gypped that I did not get enough time with this amazing human who was changing the world and making it a healthier place, which is where a large part of my mission comes from. But it was also the moment where, once the dust settled, there was also a lot of peace in her passing based on all of the pain and discomfort that she was in. It was like, holy crap, now we have these two businesses. What are we going to do?
Right.
And, so for the first year, again, another very fuzzy, blurry year, my dad and I became co-owners of these two locations. And I was able to sell her newest location that she had opened to a suitable owner in April of 2022. And we still have Miss Patty up there who helped open that location with my mom. And that location's still well and alive and thriving. And we're still very much connected to them. And I'm still very much connected with Patty, as you know, which left me with the one location. And so we'll be celebrating, let's see, what month are we in? We'll be celebrating 15 years of business at Westminster Fit Body Bootcamp in September, which is mind blowing. And so as of September, I'll have been the owner for 4 years. And I say owner for 4 years because, like I said, that first year was just, I had no idea what I was doing. I was lucky to be surrounded by coaches that had been with her for multiple years. The 4 coaches that were with her, beside her when she passed are still with me today. I have a great team. I have a coach who's been with me for 14 years. I have a coach who's been with me for 13 years. 8 years, 6 years, and then we have a couple babies on the team who are also total rock stars. But, I often think of that time and I empathize with them so much because they didn't know what was going to happen. And neither did the members. It was kind of like, okay, my mom, Lisa's gone. Sarah and Mark are the owners. There was just kind of a lot of hush hush because we didn't really know what we were going to do. And trying to figure out if that was something I even wanted to take on amidst the grieving process was just not even in my thought process at that
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. That's something I wanted to ask you about. Like you, I lost a parent to cancer, and I
Mhm.
remember watching my father waste away and cancer just eating him alive. And I remember just being obviously laser focused on him and having him always in my thoughts and every day up until the day that he passed. And I can't imagine you in that same situation, dealing with that, watching your mom deteriorate, but at the same time having this burden of running a business that you really were learning on the fly.
Mhm.
So how did you, I mean, it had to be incredibly difficult.
Mhm.
And I'm just curious, looking back, if you could think of like what strategies or what coping mechanisms did you use to deal with that grief while still taking on the responsibilities of learning that business at the same time?
To the question about grieving, I thought about this so much after she passed that when someone loses a loved one, right, and then they have a job and they return to work after their acceptable period of grieving, whatever that is that they need, people are very apologetic and empathetic, and then life goes back to normal. And I think there's something so sad about that. There's something so sad about feeling like people don't truly understand the magnitude of your loss and watching things go back to normal. And I feel so fortunate that I had 250 members at the time who, I have members who have been with me, been with us for 15 years. So all of these incredible people whose lives had been deeply touched by my mother. And so, being amongst that community was so cathartic. I felt so held. I felt that there were so many people that shared this loss with me. It wasn't just that I was now the owner of this business and I'd lost my mom. We had all lost her. And I think there was a certain gentleness that I was given both by my team and by the members during that first year or 8 or so months of you don't have to this doesn't have to be your dream. They were less concerned about me as the new owner as much as they were about me as her daughter. And so there was something so beautiful about the grieving process and having all of these people around me who truly understood what we had lost. And I think that that's something that's not very common for people. I mean, there's obviously people in the world who their legacy is so strong that when their time comes, they have hundreds of people at their celebration of life, right? But to feel that on a day-to-day basis, that I was not alone with that loss beyond just my family and our immediate loved ones was so profound. And it gave me so much strength. I never had to put on the face of I'm okay. Like if I had a day where I was at work and it was like, you know what? I'm really grieving today. I need to go home. My team was like, go, or if somebody on my team was having that moment, well, so we were all able to hold each other. And so I think for that first 8 to 12 months after her passing, I was lucky enough to have that. And gosh, it's so wild to think back on how much I didn't know at that point and figuring things out every single day. I mean, not only figuring out the business, but my mom's affairs were not in order at all. And so, when someone passes and their affairs aren't in order and they own two businesses, there's this whole other world that you're living in when you're not in the business of trying to take steps every day to move that forward. And that is something that, my dad and I really took on together. And thank goodness for him. And him and I grew so close during that period of time because every morning we would be texting at 3:30 or 4, like, okay, we're going to try to get this done today. I got to cancel the Amazon subscription and this and that. And so it was a lot of that. And, my mom was a fantastic entrepreneur. And so, she was at a position where she could open a second location. So that said, that first location was pretty self-sufficient. I mean, she was highly involved in it. She was highly operational in that first location. But because she had segued and started to open that second location, they were pretty independent, like they could keep the ship running. Thank goodness. But of course, there's still all the back end ownership things that they didn't know. And so when it came to figuring that stuff out, it was truly, I had to just every day check myself back to the present moment. Like, what can we learn and figure out today? We got to keep the lights on. We got to keep the sessions running. We have to pay the people. We can do all those things today. It's a good day. But she was so big on personal growth and professional growth. And so I think that's where I felt the biggest lack was and the most pressure was, how do I keep us all moving forward, right? How do I keep us all moving forward while really just trying to figure out how to get through each day? So it's the mindset of presence, I think, for me, like staying in the present moment, realizing you're not going to figure it out all in one day. You have to be patient. Open your heart, right? Admit that you don't know anything about anything. These people love you. They're here to support you just like you feel about them. And by building that trust with my team and being vulnerable and not pretending that I was going to be able to step up and be the person that my mom was, I mean, those were huge shoes to fill in so many ways. And so I really just kind of humbled myself, and they went with me. They were with me every step of the way. They understood that we were all in a really vulnerable place. We were all grieving, we were in a big transition, and it was really tough, but I had so much grace around me. I mean, when I think back to that time, it's like, yes, it was incredibly challenging, but I was so held. I was so held by our community. And, that space and that love was a big catalyst for me rolling up my sleeves and ultimately deciding, like, I want to take this to the next level. Because I think that was the sensitivity for a lot of people around me, was like, it's okay if you don't want to do this. That's kind of their way of saying, like, what's going to happen to our gym? Of course, they were wondering that.
Of course. Yeah. That's their space for sure.
Yeah. So just presence. Presence is so huge. Even now, it's, in business, we're really harsh on ourselves looking at what we didn't accomplish. We're always looking to the future at what we want to accomplish. But it's so important to bring it back to, like, here's where I am today.
Yeah.
Here's what would make today a good day. Here's what I'd like to accomplish, and go after that.
It's time to ask yourself, when was the last time you prioritized you? Did you know that research shows that nearly 85% of high performers struggle to maintain a performance mindset while juggling the demands of work and personal life? Those who actively prioritize their performance mindset and personal growth are 30% more likely to achieve their goals in business and life. If you're feeling crippling stress and anxiety, or if you're feeling guilty when you take a moment for yourself, or if you're stuck in the grind and feeling burnt out, you're not alone. Many of us yearn for more, but struggle with the fear of being judged or feeling selfish. And you want to step into the next best version of yourself. That's why I created the Rinse Method, which got me from paraplegic to marathon runner. Backed by science-based proven strategies and now customized for high performers like you. If you're stuck and stressed and want clear steps that you can implement today to move forward, make sure you visit thepositivepersistence.com to download our free Rinse PDF. I think that is such a pearl of wisdom when you talk about taking it step by step, day by day, or in that day being present, thinking, okay, what can I accomplish today? What can I get done to move the needle forward? Because I think a lot of us, we get overwhelmed with the adversities that we have in our life, with the setbacks that we have in our lives. And we're like, how am I going to do all of this? And we feel like we have to do it all at once. Like there's no other way, like this all or nothing situation. But as you described it, it's that proverbial, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? And you thinking about, okay, what are maybe the three things that I can focus on today to get done so I can actually move that needle forward instead of being just completely frozen by, oh my God, there's so much to do. Where do I start? It's like, just pick a place and, as you said, be present and just focus in for that day and just focus on the day. And then tomorrow you do the next thing or the same thing, right? I think it's so profound because I think that we lose that in all areas of life, not just in entrepreneurship, but in any level or any situation that we have in our lives. We need to really remember that, just to be present and focus on what can I do right now? What's possible? What's in my wheelhouse that I can actually do to help my situation?
Right. And to stay open and to accept help. I mean, that was another big one. It's, I stepped into this role of the leader, right? And it's like, okay, I don't have all the answers. I'm not going to pretend I do. Let me just, like I said, keep my heart wide open to what's available to me in terms of how I can be supported right now. And that's another thing, in the journey of entrepreneurship. It's as we find this path, we kind of get head down, and we have to remember to stay open, to keep our hearts open. And that imposter syndrome was so real for me for a while.
Sure. Do you feel that being open-minded and open-hearted was what helped you maintain some of your like emotional strength during that time?
Definitely open-hearted for sure. And I think I drew on, a lot of my strength came from how profound her legacy was, and how responsible I felt to hold that, and seeing, and having experience for the months leading up to that, just how special it was. And, I grew up in her Fit Body locations. I mean, when I was in high school was when she started her first location. She used to welcome my soccer team in, and we would do preseason stuff, and she'd totally kick our ass at 5:30 in the morning. And it's like, so I had grown up along these people, and yeah, staying open, definitely. But more than that, staying open helped me gain clarity on where I was going. Because I think that was the hardest part, was, do I feel obligated to tend to this legacy, or is this what I really want? And so it was either going to be, there was going to be a period of time where where we kind of worked through some stuff, and then it would be time to find a more suitable owner to continue this on, because my dad and I both knew we didn't want to see either location close. Or was this something that I wanted to go after? And there was a clear shift for me when I decided that. And that's where that's where the shift from staying afloat changed to making it my own and growing, not just surviving, but thriving. And that was huge.
Was there any one moment or one situation that helped you make that shift? Like, was there something that happened that made you transition from, okay, I have to keep this thing going, to this is now my vision to make it thrive?
1,000%. And that was World Conference in Scottsdale, Arizona. I guess it was 2022, May. I think it was in May at that point. And I took two of my coaches, who's now my leadership team, Chrissy and Sarah. And I remember sitting in that chair. I mean, what a high energy event. It was my first World Conference. It was out of this world energetic. And, Bryce, our CEO of Fit Body, gave a presentation, and he, with conviction, said in his presentation, like, stop dabbling, go all in. And I took that like right to the soul in that moment, because I felt, okay, I've done what I need to do to keep this thing afloat, right? Keep it operational. But now I'm doing a disservice to this legacy if I don't, like I said, either get out of the way and let someone else do it, or go all in. And so we came home from World Conference, and I sat down to have our unpacking the box meeting with Chrissy and Sarah, where we kind of take all of our learnings out of the box and make some action plans and debrief a bit. And we had this really emotional moment where I said, you guys, I'm ready to do this. And I feel excited, and I understand how hard this has been for you, because you don't know where I've stood, and you don't know if you're even going to have employment, in the next year. But I said, like, you have my commitment. I've made a decision that this is what I want, and I'm ready to run with it. And we were all in tears, and it was, like I said, highly emotional. And that was kind of the turning point. And it was like everything changed after that. It was like, again, that imposter syndrome, it's like, okay, you can be bold enough to take risks now. You can be strong enough to blaze your own paths. You don't have to do things exactly as she always did them anymore. She would want you to blaze your own path now. And that's what I did. And it was, borrowed confidence on many occasions to do that. But it was everything we needed. I mean, everything shifted in our business. Everything shifted in our team after that. And it was hard for the team too, but they, again, the grace that they showed me in making decisions differently than my mom may have made them, or differently than they had been done in the past. I mean, there could have been so many instances where I had a team that was kind of like this is how we've always done it. And, a lot of resistance. And I was never met with that.
Right. Talk to us a little bit about something you just mentioned, which I think is super profound: borrowed confidence. If you can, in your words, explain what that is to you and how that helped you.
Absolutely. Yes. Borrowed confidence, borrowed belief. I think we all need that at certain points in our lives. I mean, I feel that a huge part of our journey walking this earth is the relationships that we form, right? The connection that we have with other humans or animals or spirits or whatever that is for each individual. And, when someone believes in you more than you believe in yourself for maybe no good reason, or maybe they see a side of you that you just don't see, if you're willing to accept that as a truth and move from that space, take action from that space, amazing things can happen. I just don't think that we do that very much. We're so dependent on our own belief in ourselves, which can take us a long way, and we need that. But sometimes to kind of kickstart that, you have to look the people in the eyes that are telling you that they believe in you, and believe them. Believe them that you can do it. Believe them that you're strong enough. Believe them that you'll learn what you need to learn, that you'll figure it out as you go, that you will overcome. Because if you don't, you may never know. You may never know if you can overcome that thing. And it's the same thing we do for our clients, right? We can't want something more than somebody else wants it, but we can give them a whole lot of belief and help and hope that they'll take that and accept transformation.
Great. I think that is so powerful. And I don't know how the saying goes. I know if it's hard to see the picture when you're in the frame, or it's hard to see the frame when you're in the picture. I think that's how it goes. But the point is that you can't always see your best side. You can't always see your strength. You can't always see your power. Other people can, because they're looking at you from a different lens. They're looking at them through their lens and not your lens. And they're able to see things that you may not be able to see. And it's so important, like you said, that you have to listen to those individuals when they tell you that they believe in you, or they show you that they believe in you, and to take that to heart and to accept the fact that someone else may be thinking more of you than you do in a certain aspect of your life, and value that, and then take action on that. Because how many times, and it's a simple thing, like how many times do we get a compliment from somebody and we don't accept it? Like we might feel guilty about it, or we say, "Oh, thank you." Like, but it's like, yeah, thank you. Yes, I will accept it. I will take that. That feels good. Thank you very much. Like when you are open to that and you don't have a wall up against people giving you that feedback, that can be so powerful. And it could be that missing piece that you need in your puzzle to start to move forward. So I just wanted to circle back on that, because I think that's so important. And what you said is that borrowed belief, because so many of us, I think, need that and don't realize it, but it's there. Like,
well, the interesting thing, Ian, is that when you said that, just made me think that if someone's giving us constructive feedback, we're like, oh, it must be true. Like, this is it. This is my reality. But if it's a compliment or praise, it's like, who, me? No, not me. It can't be me. And it's just such an interesting relationship with ourselves, which, that I think a lot of people struggle with their worth and believing they are enough. And like I said, I think we're here to build connection and build relationship. And so if somebody believes that about you, let it be true. It's their perspective, right? We can't argue their perspective. And if we can take a little belief from that and run with it, then yeah, that borrowed belief is going to open so many doors.
yeah, it's like a little added wind to your sails, if you will.
Right. Totally.
For sure. Sarah, what, and this is kind of a broad question, okay? But what advice would you give to somebody who may be facing not necessarily a similar challenge that you did, but someone who needs to cultivate resilience like you did and strength in their journey? Because I can't imagine, and I don't mean to put words into your mouth, but I would have to imagine that at some point this had to have felt like a overwhelmingly daunting task. I mean, for you to be dealing with the grief of your mother passing, and while she was alive, the grief of seeing her in the way that you didn't want to see her, but then moving into this role as a business owner, which you didn't ask for and didn't necessarily maybe want at the time, but dealing with all of that at once. How did you have the emotional resilience and tenacity to be able to come back at it every day and just continue to move forward. What was your secret? Like, what's the magic pill that you had that, that enabled you to do that? Because to me, that's incredible. That's
Thank
incredible.
you, Ian. I appreciate that. Well, every day I woke up with crippling anxiety. So that's, but to that point, it was about realizing I was never going to wake up and find perfect conditions waiting for me because they didn't exist in that chapter of my life. Certainty, happiness on a lot of days, comfortability, it didn't exist. And I knew it would exist again, but I knew that what I did in those moments was going to make or break its existence in the future and how quickly I'd be able to move back into those spaces. And, there's a lot of highs and lows. That's not to say I was unhappy through all of that. It was extremely challenging. I also look back on those moments when she was alive, and I have so many memories that we shared when she was sick because she was such a light during that time. But one of my favorite sayings is feel the fear and do it anyways. And I think so often in life, we wait for the perfect condition or even just some sense of feeling like we're making the right decision. And I'm very intuitive and I wholeheartedly believe in that. But I also believe that there's something waiting on the other side of that line that divides those who just wait and wait and wait and those who take the leap. And, taking the leap can feel really fun and exciting, and it can also feel really terrifying and horrific. And both are important. And there may be the same outcome waiting on the other side of both of those, but we have to feel the fear and do it anyways. Because as we talked about, before, if not, you'll be paralyzed in that spot, right? And the way I see it, the days are going to go on either way. Life is going to go on either way. So I can either prolong this period of discomfort. Obviously, the grief is the grief, but I can prolong this period of discomfort of feeling paralyzed and not knowing where I'm going, or I can start pushing through that fear, making decisions, and then tapping into that intuition of how can I move? How can I shape? How can I shift based on what I'm feeling now? But you have to take that first leap. And a lot of times that first leap is going to present itself to you when you're not even close to ready, right? Like I wasn't ready at all. I wasn't ready for any of it. I still don't know what I'm ready for. I still try to take that thing that I went through and continue to feel the fear and do it anyways, and continue to start things before I'm ready. And I have made such a commitment to try to do that, for the past 4 years, because you don't know what's waiting on the other side of that until you do it the first time. And then you start to build that confidence within yourself that, no matter what happens, I'll be okay. And I always knew I'll be okay. And it's like a muscle that you work in the gym. Like the more that you can kind of flex that muscle of going to those uncomfortable places, the more fruitful the journey is going to be. And so don't wait. Don't let fear stop you. Feel that fear. Let it exist. You don't have to attach to it. It's just an emotion.
Right.
And then move beyond it.
So be able to acknowledge it and then move past it any way that you can.
Right. Be aware of it, like any emotion. And then do whatever the heck you were going to do anyways.
Something to be said about, what you mentioned of, the day's going to go on anyway. Life is going to keep happening. Time is going to keep passing. And we already know what's going to happen if we don't take any action, right? Why not find out what happens if we do?
Right. Especially when you're in, a really terrible situation. It's like, what do you have to lose? What do you have to lose? You either stay or you go somewhere else.
Yeah. I think that a lot of people, myself included, at times in my life, it's actually more comfortable to stay in that uncomfortable position, because I know that we familiarize ourselves with and sometimes get emotionally addicted to those feelings of grief or those feelings of stress or those feelings of anxiety because we can predict them. We know they're going to be there. So when you wake up, with crippling anxiety, as much as that may suck, that it's going to happen, and it's actually a familiar emotion. And for some of us, we choose to kind of lean on that a little bit instead of doing the uncomfortable thing and moving past that anxiety, we sit in it. And it takes a lot of courage to be able to figure out what steps I need to take and then actually put the action behind it to move forward. Because like you said, there is something waiting for us on the other side of that line, but we don't know what it is. And for a lot of us, it's scarier to find out what that is than it is to stay in the situation that we feel and think that we need to get out of.
Right. I just heard a quote the other day. I think it was, people will often choose a familiar hell over an unfamiliar heaven. And it's exactly as you said. We develop these cycles, we develop these responses, and they're predictable. We like predictability as humans. We like consistency. And so it's so easy to get stuck in that space. Even though it's uncomfortable, it's predictable.
Yeah. I think that once we get to that point of, I can't take this anymore, then we start to take some action, or just becomes so unbearable that then we start to do something about it. If we could just get ourselves to get to that point a little bit faster, we can start to take more action and move forward and start to change our lives for the better. Well, Sarah, you have such an amazing story. And again, I am just in awe of what you have been able to deal with, and then not only come out the other side of it, if you will, as an entrepreneur, as a leader, but now you're building your business and it's successful, and you continue to impact your community and the people around you. And knowing that, and it must have been, an unbelievably trying time. Is it fair to say that you are now stronger because of what you've gone through?
100%. Yes, absolutely. And I think choosing response over reaction has been the biggest skill that I've acquired. I think we talked a little about perspective, and I always say my reality is my responsibility, because my reality is created by my response, or my reaction rather, to something. And this journey that I've been on has not only been a professional development journey, but it's been a personal development journey. And I'm sure you can relate as an entrepreneur, because I've had to, hold myself to a much higher standard in stepping into this role. Like, the things that got me where I was before wouldn't have got me here today. And so I think that's where the biggest amount of strength lies for me. And it does feel, as sad as it was to go through something so monumental at such a long age, I do feel like I have grit now. I am resilient, and in business, every day has a challenge, but challenges are also opportunities. And losing my mom wasn't a challenge. It was more than that, but it was an opportunity. I love what I do now. I feel like I found my place in this world. The leaps and bounds that I've been able to take with my team, and the lives we've been able to touch, and just my connection to my community has been, I look and I just say, like, thank you, Mom. Like, I wouldn't be here if I hadn't gone through that. And that's a really beautiful thing. So yeah, I like to think I'm a little bit stronger now after all that. Yeah. After all that. Yeah.
For sure.
The interesting thing is that how significant we view like these challenges or things, it changes too. So as I get to this point, it's like, well, yeah, I guess I'm stronger. It's like, no, I am stronger. The things that used to knock me off kilter before, they don't knock me off kilter anymore. So just the ability to stay grounded through it all has been, that's, I have to kind of like, we don't give ourselves enough credit, because as we change, our relationship to everything else in the world changes as well. So yeah, like my perspective of going through something challenging is so much different now. And I feel a lot more equipped.
Yeah, that is awesome and beautifully said. I mean, you are exactly right. I think that we don't realize how much strength we have in remembering what we have gone through and how we were able to overcome those things in the past that then enable us to be stronger now to deal with the things that we're going to have to deal with in the future.
And I don't know why I still, when people say like, you've been through so much, I kind of feel, my first thought is, well, I haven't been through that much. Like everybody's been through a lot. We don't, and I don't know what that is. I don't know what that relationship is, but it's always very interesting, because I have all these people in my community who have been here through it all. And they'll say like, you've been through a lot. Or I have a coach who'd say, you've been through a lot, because I went through some other crazy personal stuff in the past 2 years. And she's always like, you've been through a lot. And I'm like, well, no, I mean, it's not, it hasn't been that bad. And that right there shows that resilience, shows that when you work that muscle, when you just put a little bit more belief in yourself, you are ready. You are ready for whatever's going to come your way.
Absolutely. And stronger than we think.
Absolutely.
You're stronger than we think. Sarah, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I mean, you are the epitome of positive persistence and resilience and being able to come back from setbacks. So I want to thank you again so much for joining us and letting our viewers and our listeners hear about your story and how you have been an amazing individual.
Well, I hope it's valuable for them. I appreciate you giving me the space.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that there may be some of our listeners and viewers that may want to reach out to you. So is there a place or a link that you want us to put in the notes where they can reach out to you?
Yeah. Sarah Dumont on Facebook would probably be the best space. Or I would love it even more if they would connect with me through my business page, which is Westminster Fit Body Bootcamp. I feel to get to know me on another level, visiting our page there would be a great way to do so, because I think my spirit speaks a lot through that platform.
Awesome. And you do have a beautiful spirit, that is for sure. We'll make sure that we put those links in the show notes. And again, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. And I want to thank all of our listeners and our viewers for joining us. And as we always wrap these up, remember, stay positive, stay persistent, and know that mindset is everything. We'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning in and being part of the Positive Persistence family. We're having a great time creating this content, and we truly hope it inspires you to embrace positivity and persistence in your own journey. If this podcast episode inspired you or entertained you, scroll down, hit those stars, and leave a comment. Your 5-star reviews and shares encourage us and help us grow the show. So until next time, stay positive, stay persistent, and remember, mindset is everything.